Fire Sword, Chapter 25. Taking the Capital, Part the Third. The Empire's capital was in a complete disarray. The Elysian League stormed into their streets, laying waste to any that dared take up arms against them. The Feroxi troops were up front, smashing into the discombobulated Valmese, while the Holodom finished them off with their spears, magic, and bows. Lastly, the regathered resistance of Valm took care of wiping out stragglers, or those that went into hiding to try and ambush them from the rear. But the fact that the resistance was now invading the capital was not the part that was terrifying the Valmese. No, it was the 9 warriors, all armed with weapons of the finest make, descending from the sky on shining wings that was destroying troop morale. Walhart looked down on it all, with a calm exterior that betrayed the volcano about to erupt. "Tell me, Exilus," he said in a quiet rumble, "how do you think that this came about?"
I have no idea," the fat tactician stammered. I had their loyalty completely aligned in our favor. There's no way, unless...
He suddenly paled. Was it Yenfei they feared all along, and not me?
"Fool!"
Walhart bellowed as he rounded on his advisor.
"Do you truly think that anyone ever feared you? Without Yenfei, your threats were no more than the shadow of a tiny spider."
Now Exilus's vanity came to the fore as he screamed,
"A spider, am I? Well, this spider has woven webs in secret that not even you could..."
"Are you referring to the fire emblem?" Walhart said, his voice growing ominously quiet again. "And that woman, Aversa, I believe it was." He nodded with satisfaction as Exilus paled further. "Yes, I know, Worm. You have no secrets from me."
"If you knew..."
"Why haven't I killed you yet?" Walhart shrugged. "Even I can admit that you have your uses, such as amusement. No matter. You'll stay by my side until the end of this battle." Finally fed up with all the failures and arrogance, he grabbed Exilus by the collar and began dragging the obese man toward the armory, where he would be outfitted for his final battle. Crom and Robin took a moment of respite to gaze up in the sky in wonder. The warriors of Alfheim were showing coordination and teamwork that not even the shepherds had ever seen in their lives. Robin's tactician eye in particular kept track of their movements, trying to figure out patterns that he might be able to apply to his winged units in the future. 2 of them flew on purple-black wings and wielded single dark rapiers. They were working in unison, one landing in front of her group and keeping them distracted with a series of blindingly fast and complicated swordplay moves, while the other would come back around and take them by surprise from the rear. Their work done, Yuki and Aiko would take to the sky in search of their next targets. Sinon was up on a spire, mostly staying fixed in one place and only using her wings if she was being targeted by an enemy spellcaster. Her arrows flew true every time, no matter how far her target, and Robin realized that Varian was no longer their ace archer. If Sinon could see it, she could shoot it. Leafa and Silica were unleashing multiple wind spells as they flew above the rooftops, picking off Pegasi and Wyverns as their primary targets. Pina, Silica's Wyvern, would charge ahead of them, attracting the attention of other riders so the girls could target them with their air magic. Flying more slowly than the others was one of the new recruits, Sachi. Accompanying her was Yui, the daughter of Kirito and Asuna. Yui was using her divine magic to disable enemy soldiers while her older partners sat down to heal those that were wounded from the League. Part of Robin wished that the girl wasn't holding back, but it was not his place to tell her how to use her powers, nor would it be morally acceptable for him to tell a little girl to kill people against her will. That would make him no better than Exilus or Walhart. Of course, the greatest spectacle was the Black Lightning pair. Asuna's speed with her white rapier and lightning magic were unmatched by any of her comrades, though Aiko and Yuki were close to her level of speed when it came to swordplay. Kirito's twin blades could only be described as dancing as he held them in defense of his loved one. They were seen the least by friend and foes alike due to their speed and dexterity as they flew low in the streets and in between buildings. She would stab an opponent so fast that he would be dead before he hit the streets, and she flew past him in between houses. He would follow it by plowing into a group of people, cutting them down with eyes like steel before shooting skyward and unleashing dark energies through his elucidator and dark repulsor. The Alfheim squad was the equivalent of a small army, Crom and Robin thought. However, when they lowered their gazes, the blond man had to smile brightly with pride. Morgan and Marth's combination of magic and sword use was flawless, he thought, though he did realize that it might be his pride blinding him to any faults in their technique. Morgan would weaken their opponents with magic, allowing Marth to have an easier time of finishing them off. They were working so fast through the enemy ranks, their mother and grandmother, assigned as guardians for their battle, could barely keep up. "Your children really are something, Robin," Crom said to him, startling Robin. "I hope you do just as well raising them this time around." Thanks, Crom. Robinson stammered, his face flushing slightly, and not from the exertion of battle. But perhaps we should wait a while before I think about having any children in this timeline, huh? Oh, but of course, Crom said with a mischievous grin, because if you touch little Lucina anywhere you shouldn't before I say you can, you will lose your manhood in every sense of the word. And he re-gripped falchion before gesturing for a pale Robin to follow him. Marth and Morgan had run into an ambush. Boy, I hope Dad doesn't see this, Morgan muttered nervously as she saw one of the 12 enemy soldiers preparing to cast a fire spell. Right now, I actually wouldn't mind if he did see us, Marth argued back. We could use some backup. Just before the magic could be flung, a small figure dropped down on the man, breaking his shoulders and smacking his head to the ground hard enough to knock him out. Long black hair splayed out as Yui whipped her head to the side to see a swordsman running at her. Beating her wings hard, she shot backwards and over the sword sweep that would have cut her in two. Marth seized the opportunity and darted forward to kill Yui's attacker, even as Sachi hovered above them and cast a blast of fire that stunned a spearman that tried to go for Morgan, leaving her open to unleash a Thoron spell that speared 2 more men and blasted a hole through a house. After that, the next few seconds were all a blur to all that stood in the alley. The children pummeled, blasted, slashed, and beat down their enemies until only one of them was left. Unfortunately, they were not aware that he was still capable of fighting until Marth strode by him in the process of putting away his sword. Just as the boy stepped by him, the man ceased faking his comatose state and stabbed Marth in the side, just below his ribs. The boy with blue hair simply looked down at his attacker with shock in his eyes as the sword left his body, causing a red fountain to erupt from his side. His vision flickered as he fell forward and blacked out as soon as he hit his head on the dirt street. But just before the light left them, he saw Yui stretched out her hand at the same time that Morgan opened a page in her yellow tome. The man was struck first by 3 bolts of lightning, causing him to scream in pain before a brilliant beam of light completely disintegrated him. Sachi's eyes widened to the size of grapefruits as she saw Yui unleash the deadly might of her divine magic. One moment, the Valmese man had been getting to his feet, preparing to fight the remaining children. The next, he was gone, and Yui was standing there with wide eyes, remnants of her powerful magic emanating from her hand. Morgan looked over at the raven-haired younger girl with surprise for a brief moment before rushing to her brother's side, using her long sleeves to try and staunch the bleeding. "Marth!" she shouted, trying to get him to respond. "Marth, wake up! You need to stay awake!" "Move back," Sachi said as she snapped out of her shocked state to bring her staff next to Marth's wound. "Yui, I need your help." Yui shook herself and moved to kneel beside Marth while telling Morgan, "Move your hands. We need to have direct access to a wound this bad." Reluctantly, Morgan did so, and Yui placed her own pale hands over the ghastly wound. Sachi put the orb on the little girl's hands and let her own inner magic flow into the tool, amplifying the energy that then flowed into Yui. The Kirigaya daughter now let out a new, softer light out into the stabbed flesh. The edges of the cut drew together, bit by bit, even as light spilled into the wounded prince's insides, sealing the terrible damage done to his organs. Morgan looked on in pale fright as dark thoughts of a life without her brother swirled about. It was maddening to her that for all her skill in battle, she could do nothing to stop the loss of life when it came down to situations like this. It took about a minute of concentrated healing from both of the girls, but at long last, Marth's life was out of danger. Yui slumped forward, exhausted, and Sachi needed her staff to support her wobbly legs. The older healer was less experienced, and the younger one had provided the skill necessary to save the young man's life. Both were completely drained of power at this point, and were in no condition to fight, let alone fly. Marth woke up with a jerk and wide eyes. "Where's the dastard that— You're okay!" Morgan cried as she threw her arms around her brother. "I thought I lost you for a moment." Morgan looked around, taking in the situation before hugging his sister back and saying, "You very well might have. Next time I'll have to make sure of things before I move on. How did you take out the man that did me in?" "I didn't," Morgan said as she looked over at Yui, who was now looking down numbly at her blood-stained hands. "Yui did." "But—" Marth shook his head, both confused and uncertain as to how to ask the next question. Hadn't Yui taken a vow not to take a life directly with her abilities? "I killed someone," the little girl whispered. "It wasn't avoidable." Sachi said as she placed a hand on her companion's shoulder. "You did nothing wrong, Yui." "But I did," Yui said as she started to cry. "Morgan was already taking him down, and I... No, how could I?" She started to sob uncontrollably, and then she threw aside her staff to embrace the younger fairy. Morgan looked on awkwardly, unsure of what to say. For her, taking lives was not something she took pleasure in, but neither did she shed tears for fallen enemies. So she was uncertain of how to comfort the younger girl when it was apparent to her that she had done nothing wrong. Martha, on the other hand, was still overwhelmed by what had just happened. He had been so close to death. Then he thought he saw the timid little girl transform for what was just a moment into a fierce warrior and destroyed the man that would have taken his life. But then everything was dark, and the next thing he knew, the Yui he was familiar with was saving his life. It was in such contrast to her character that he didn't know how to handle her at this point. So they did nothing as Yui cried and cried and cried. We have the southern half of the city under our control. We're looking at moving up to finishing securing the north. Kirito said as he landed with Asuna. If you ask me, I think we're ready to move on to phase 3. Let the cons finish taking care of everything out here. I agree. Robin nodded, though he did seem a bit distracted. Are the shepherds gathering yet? Some of them are, but I haven't given the order to gather at the palace just yet, Kirito replied. Should we get to it? Yeah, Robin nodded. We'll meet you there and bring anybody we find along the way. Stay safe out there, Kirito said just before he shot up into the sky. Don't worry, Robin. Asuna smiled at the blonde man. We'll find Martha and Morgan. Make sure that they make it to the palace. Thank you, Asuna, Robin said with evident relief. Safe flying. And she took off to follow her husband. You're becoming quite the father there, Crom grinned at his best friend. Are you worried about your little ones? Technically, they're your little ones, so I'm surprised you aren't more concerned about them. Robin shot back slightly annoyed. Robin, that's why I'm not worried. Crom laughed as they began jogging in the direction of the palace. I've seen both you and Lucina fight, and if those kids are half as good as either of you, I think that they'll be fine. I'd rather know than think, Robin muttered, though he did appreciate the compliment. You're always thinking, Robin, Crom teased. Robin rolled his eyes and said nothing. Right now he needed to focus on preparing the shepherds for the final battle against the forces of Valm, where they would finally confront the dark tyrant that had murdered many, a valiant shepherd named Klein among them. In their names, he would not fail. It's been a little bit since I did like a super action heavy chapter. I think up until this point I was trying to like divvy it up a little bit between, this is happening when you have this talk, this character progression, and that's good. But, it's like, it's a siege. It's a chapter about a siege against a city fortress. I mean, I gotta have at least one super hardcore fighting chapter in here somewhere. And if I remember correctly, the next two are pretty heavy on the whole fight stuff. So there's that to look forward to. I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. Please like and subscribe. If you're feeling so inclined, please head on over to my Patreon. You can find me under the same name as you know me on fanfiction.net, which is Mataris. I want to say special thanks to Will Underwood as my biggest Patreon donator right now. And, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the story. I'll see you again for the next one in just a few days. Take care, guys. Red Swordsman out.